English translation, 311th contact, Thursday, 13th September 2001, 07:28 hours.
Today you are here early again, my friend. Nice greetings to the new day.
Be greeted, Edward, dear friend. Yes, you are right. But I need the explanations that you have prepared for us.
Unfortunately, I am not yet finished with them. But if you are patient, then I will be finished in about 10-15 minutes. Sit down, please.
Thanks. I will wait.
So then here, this is all the material. It did not take long. As I see, you have brought along a few things again.
That is right, but this time it is not so urgent. Thus you can allow yourself some time.
I am glad about that. Thanks. Then I would immediately like to ask you some questions. Since you have catapulted the destroyer from the SOL system a fairly long time ago, or somehow removed it, the prophecies associated with it are probably no longer relevant, right?
That is true. Your assumption is right.
With this, some other things should also probably remove themselves from the realm of the prophecies, just in terms of the fact that they existed in connection with the destroyer. This is well understood. So it is not a question, but rather an observation. After all, quite a few things were linked with the disappearance of the destroyer, which will now, fortunately, no longer appear. For this, the Earth humans would actually have to express to you their thanks.
That is not a need for us because ultimately, our most distant ancestors were responsible for the fact that the Wanderer could penetrate into this space-time configuration and could arrive into the SOL system. For at that time, they did not have their dimension gate under control.
Of course, one can also look at it in such a manner. Here is another question. Regarding the Syrians who at that time presented Sfath with their pear-shaped spaceship, did that concern a people who, here on the Earth, is called Nomo? And did those who provided the gift belong to the genetic manipulators?
A people called Nomo is unknown to us, and indeed in our space-time configuration as well as in yours. My father Sfath received his flying device as a gift from a Syrian people who are called Samanet.
Did these people have something to do with the genetic manipulators?
No, that is not the case. With the Samanetern people, it deals with a people who live in a space-time configuration which is not identical with that in which the genetic manipulators live.
Does it deal then with our space-time configuration?
No, that is not the case.
Then, in 1976, Simya-se, your daughter, also did not speak of two solar systems of the planets of Sirius in our space-time configuration, rather of a completely different one?
Certainly. We only ever speak of the constellations known to you in your space-time continuum in order to give you an approximate indication of where we are talking about in relation to the space-time continuum we are referring to.
Aha. And how does it stand, then, with that in regard to inhabited systems in our space-time configuration?
Then we also do not speak of another space-time configuration or of other dimensions.
That is clear. Understood. I assume that those who were genetically manipulated also have nothing to do with the Samanet?
That corresponds to what is given. The Samanet are quite normal humans who have not been genetically manipulated.
Those who were genetically manipulated, who came into the solar system together with the refugees from the ranks of the genetic manipulators, and therefore with the sympathizers of the genetically manipulated ones, were the descendants of those who had been genetically manipulated, as well as descendants of those who did the genetic manipulations, no?
That is correct. The genetically manipulated descendants were descended from the 8th generation, as were the descendants of the genetic manipulators.
That is all clear. Now I want to ask you about Emmanuel's burial cave. You and Quetzal explained to me that the hill in the tomb cave had collapsed outside of Jerusalem, which I then also told to Michael Heseman. He then went to Jerusalem and actually found no tomb cave, even though there had been several, as I myself had seen on site, and I myself had poked around in Emmanuel's tomb cave. The hill in which the tomb caves were had actually collapsed and was completely laid waste, for not one stone remained on another. Can you tell me what exactly happened there?
AI colorized photo. AI colorized photo. AI colorized photo. AI colorized photo.
This was, in part, already explained to you, in that we led the whole venture and brought the tomb cave to its collapse, in order to keep it from becoming a new cult place when the Talmud Emmanuel is spread across the earth, and, from this, it should arise that the tomb cave would be sought and found. With this, our interest and our duty would have actually been extinguished, and would have been fulfilled if a few things would not have still arisen in addition. Somehow, certain Israeli forces and interested powers to do with the Talmud Emmanuel, who were at the Tomb Hill, must have learned of this. So they tried to do the rest, to finally destroy all traces and evidence of Emmanuel's tomb cave. Consequently, they blew up the entire tomb hill, through which means everything finally collapsed and fell down.
Thanks for the explanation. Now I would like to ask you if you know something about a flying object of larger size, which was in the area of Brighthorn in the Bernese Highlands, and to be sure, on the 11th of August 2001, approximately between 15 hours and 16 hours.
That was actually the case. It was one of the larger flying apparatus of the Druans, who have joined our Federation and who are at the present time in the earthly airspace. At the time mentioned by you, they were on an observation flight, and they were particularly interested in the numerous hang gliders who were just circling around there. But why do you ask, and how do you know about this?
It is quite simple. Freddy was precisely at that time near the Brighthorn area on vacation, and was able to photograph the Druin ship.
I did not know that. Evidently, the Druans did not protect themselves from view, or else they deliberately opened their view protection screen toward the direction of Freddy, so that he could capture the flying apparatus on the film. That would be quite possible, for they knew, as a result of our information, that Freddy was in the Bernese Highlands on vacation. Anyway, I will ask. Also, the Druans were urged, in accordance with our and the High Council's decision, to make themselves visible to the group members if the opportunity should arise for it. So it is possible that they made themselves visible for the purpose of photographing. But if that was so, then surely only to Freddy's camera. I will clarify it.
Good, thanks. Then again, a question of a related nature, from the center's garage. At about 2250 hours on the 18th of August of this year, Barbara and some others observed a threefold formation of flying and luminous objects, which passed by, high above, at a leisurely pace. Do you know something about this?
At that time, the Druans were in your area with several of their flying apparatuses, but it is unknown to me whether the objects observed were those of the Druans. The possibility exists, however. But now, dear friend, I have to pursue my duties again, if you have no other question.
But I do, my friend. Marcel, you already know whom I mean. He is very badly ill.
I know. You asked me, yes, to clarify what his illness will bring for him. Unfortunately, I cannot bring you good news, for his chances are very bad and there is as good as no hope for improvement. His departure from this world is only a matter of time, and this is very shortly measured, for he will—
A Druin Ship by Freddie Croft, Switzerland.
In August of 2001, I spent a week's vacation together with my parents. For 4 days, we traveled in the Bernese Highlands, where we lodged in a vacation cottage in order to undertake several excursions from there. On the 15th of August, we took a tour on the Nissen, a famous mountain in the Bernese Highlands with a height of 2,362 meters above sea level. As usual, I had my photo camera equipped with a 500mm telephoto lens. Because I really liked the mountain panorama, I took some pictures, first of all without the telephoto lens, then later with this. Specifically, I took photographs of Mönch, Jungfrau, and Breithorn, also well-known mountains in the Bernese Highlands. Then somehow the Breithorn fascinated me, and I could not say why. Then it somehow moved me to take another telephoto during the time between 15 hours and 16 AHRs. Days later, I was back in the center and showed the pictures to Billy after I had seen, on one of the pictures, 2 different unidentifiable objects in the sky behind the Breithorn. So I asked what these could be, upon which Billy told me to go with him to his office, where we examined the negative under an electronic magnifying device. Then, on the enlargement, it was clearly seen that it was a Druin ship, so a space-capable interplanetary beam ship. In a later contact of Billy with Ptah, our supposition and cognition were confirmed, for at that same time, the Druins were actually at the place mentioned, for the observation of certain things. It is still to be said that the second object, which was visible on the same image, was clearly a hang glider, who circled about, along with others, in the sky, as the enlargement proved.
All dear and good friends go.
You yourself know very well that this is the course of life.
I know, also, that one cannot change it. And if the human being could change this, then he or she would become cocky, autocratic, and discontented, and moreover, they would oppress and terrorize their fellow humans even more.
With that, you speak a true word.
Since we are already talking about terrorizing, what do you think of the terrorism that has happened in America? I knew nothing of the fact that it happens.
You have pushed it out of your memory, for Quetzal informed you of this in the middle of the 80s, as a result of a look into the future. However, it is good if you repress such knowledge once you have processed it, then you will not be burdened by it. What I think of that which has happened in America, I would now like to state it as follows. Those who play with fire burns their own hands, and those who sow Gavolt will also reap Gavolt again.
That is an old proverb that we use here on the Earth. And precisely in this sense, I have also written some bulletin questions for October's issue.
The aforementioned proverb comes from your vocabulary. And these words should actually be sufficient to represent the facts clearly. But unfortunately, no reason with those concerned, and the rest of humanity will emerge from all of the horrible events because new and even worse hatred as well as blood-demanding retribution are already pre-programmed. So the one leads to the other, and the reciprocal terrorism increases more and more, from which eradication and destruction ultimately arise.
In this sense, I also wrote my bulletin answers. But it will be the case that these will not reach the human beings, and the senselessness as well as the hatred and vindictiveness and retaliatory thoughts will continue to rage. My words probably will not be more than a banal attempt to rouse the humans to give reverence and love to dignity as human beings. Everything will seem so banal, even if perhaps a handful of actual thinkers gives respect to my words and takes these to heart.
So it will be, unfortunately. But now, dear friend Edward, I really must give my attention to my duties. Farewell.
Goodbye. One moment, please. Recently I received the photos from the man from Perg. In addition, I must already say that these turned out quite fantastically well. For my part, I never had the opportunity to be able to take such good night pictures of one of your beam ships. Nevertheless, I am glad that also someone else could once take good pictures. Unfortunately, you are always reserved in such a wise that you can only be seen by our group members from a far distance. Consequently, the resulting photos then accordingly turn out in such a manner that they only show your ships through multiple magnifications.
The group members also need no proofs of our existence, for they also know about our existence without these. And so, when we make ourselves visible to them, or when we allow them to photograph our flying apparatuses, we do not do this for reasons of proof, like for the man Da, who only uses his shots for his own personal proof and, therefore, does not submit these to other persons for inspection. Thus, the fact that he got in touch with you and left you his shots only came about because I asked him to do so subconsciously through telepathic impulses. Billy? Oh, so that is it. Thanks for your efforts. By the way, I am also to pay you the thanks of the man. He was tremendously pleased that he could remove his doubts and that he was allowed to learn the truth, which only became possible for him through his observation and through his photos. At first he thought, so he told me, that he had succumbed to an illusion when he saw the light phenomenon of the ship. The real insight and recognition first came to him when he had the photo proof in his hands. That is what I still wanted to discuss. Then now, until we meet again. You are very modest, dear friend. Although the man could take better shots at night, you preserve no thought that we should also offer you the opportunity for such photos. Your thoughts and feelings are completely free of such desires.
Why should I harbor such? It was just to be noted that the man's pictures are very much better than what I myself could ever make at night. Therefore, I am in fact not jealous, but on the contrary, I am very glad that someone other than me could also take good pictures. It is really a great joy to me.
This can also be heard from your voice. Then now, until we meet again, my dear friend. Once you have completed the work for us, then call me. If you cannot reach me, then Florina is available to you. Sachlomia.
Sachlomia.